Hi, you're listening to the Heartland Insiders. This is Gordon Sixkiller along with my colleague Tom Stock. Our guest today is Shelly Harrison.
Yes.
So Shelly, welcome. Thank you for coming to the Heartland Insiders.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Shelly, I understand you raise horses and are part of the sheriff's posse. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I grew up on a horse farm right here in Bates County, and my mom would take in horses in the summertime, and she would green break them, which just means put them under saddle. And then once she got them to where they would go forward and respond a little bit to the legs and the bridle, then she turned us girls loose on them and just said, "Hey, go put some miles on these horses." I was fearless back in that day. And then as I got older and graduated from high school, went off to college, got away from horses for about 30 years.
And where'd you go to school?
Missouri Western.
That's right.
Before it was a university.
Yeah.
That's how old I am.
Well, we won't discuss that. That's okay. If you don't mind me, what was your major in school?
English.
That's right.
Yeah,
you're an English major.
Journalism. I moved to South Florida with my sister for a couple of years and then came back. And that's where I met my husband. He was my neighbor. And so we moved back here, finished raising our kids, and when we became empty nesters, we got this little acreage that we now call Blue Sky.
Blue Sky.
And it's not necessarily called Blue Sky because of the sky. It's a favorite song by the Allman Brothers.
By the Allman Brothers, yeah. Okay, cool.
That's why it's called Blue Sky.
So are you still pretty active with the horses then, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you are.
I participate. I volunteer with the sheriff's office Posse.
Yeah.
And I started doing that in 2021. And I really wanted something to do with my horses, and that seemed like something fun.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been fun. So I've learned that my horses will walk through fire for me.
Wow.
They'll go through smoke and water, and sometimes they act silly, but that's horses for you. But it's been fun. I've just wanted to do fun things, and doing that with the sheriff's office has been extraordinarily fun. It was actually emotional the first time I did a 4th of July parade. It was something I'd always wanted to do, never got to do as a kid. And then when I first got horses, I kind of dreamed about it, but doubted that I would have the courage to. And a friend of mine from Lone Jack, she said, "Hey, I want you to go ride in the Kansas City Cowboys for Cops parade." And this was back in, I think, 2017. And I said, "Really? I'm not sure I'm up for that. That seems like, you're riding in downtown Kansas
Well, your
City.
horse would have to be trained for that too, right?
Your horse would have to be." And she said, if you get in, I'll put you with a steady Eddie horse and rider, and you'll go right next to her, and it'll be great. And it was just terrific. So I rode in that a couple of times and got my horse and a lot of good experience. And so that was very emotional because I thought, I never expected to be brave enough to do it. So.
Yeah. So you're a lifelong Bates Countyan, and what do you do for work?
So today I work part-time at the sheriff's office. I'm the evidence technician there.
Shelly, you studied journalism in school. What put that on your radar?
Well, my father put that on my radar. My dad was Paul Haskins, and he worked for many years at the Kansas City Times. And so he actually, before I was born, dropped out of high school. Didn't have even a high school degree or diploma. And he went to work at the Kansas City Times as a copy boy, which meant that he shuffled paper from one desk to another. And by the time I was born, he had grown up moved up to, I believe, the Metropolitan desk, and was working at the city desk. And he had worked as a crime reporter during part of that time. And
What years are we talking here? What year?
oh
if
gosh,
you could?
that's hard for me to say off the top of my head, but I was probably 5 or 6 years old when I first remembered him working crime, and we knew it was crime. I was telling Tom this story about sitting in a car. My dad had taken me out one evening, and I was in his car, and we pulled up in front of a convenience station, and he told me before he got out of the car, he goes, "I'm going to get out and talk to a man, and I want you to stay in the car. I want you to keep the doors locked, and do not get out of the car under any circumstances." And so I was like, okay. And I'm just a little tot, maybe 5 or 6 years old, and I can still remember that. And it was dark, and I remember my dad getting out and meeting a gentleman standing right in front of the car in front of this convenience store. Couldn't tell what they were saying. I know there was some animated hands moving kind of thing. But my dad was talking to this gentleman for a while, and then he got back in the car, and we went home. And I know now, years later, my dad was reporting on mob activities. And so there was some articles he wrote, or that his reporters wrote, and they were reporting on what was going on.
That's why I asked
City
you.
mob.
That's why I asked you if you could remember what the date was.
I was born in 62, and so I was probably 5 or 6 years old at that time when that occurred. And I can still remember it wasn't long after that. It may have been the same year, but we were living in Kansas City somewhere, and I can't tell you where because I was a tot. But not long after, our windows got shot out.
While you were in the house.
We were in the house,
Wow.
but we were upstairs sleeping, and all of us woke up. It was my mom. My dad was a nighttime, worked nights at the Times, and my mom got us all up. We all ran into the bathroom or someplace, and she kept us still for quite a while until it was quiet for a while, and then she had us all get our clothes, and we hopped in the car, and she drove to Adrian, and that's where we lived ever.
So do you think that was a message to your dad to maybe not release a certain thing that he had picked up from an informant?
To my dad.
Yeah, definitely. That could have been very dangerous to your family.
Yeah.
But your father kept on working then at the Times?
He kept on working. He just commuted from. We ended up living out of Merwin, Missouri, which is a little tiny dinky hole in the wall out there, but
it's Bates County, correct?
Bates County, and he commuted thereafter. Yeah.
Your father, my understanding, he later worked for the New York Times.
He did, yes. So my dad was, I think, the city editor at the time that the Hyatt Regency collapse happened. And he had a couple of reporters working under him, and they won a Pulitzer Prize for the Kansas City Star newspaper for their coverage of that, because they uncovered a lot of the, what the structural problems were that ended up getting them the Pulitzer Prize. And so New York Times made him an offer that he couldn't refuse. And my father loved the city of New York. He loved New York like nobody's business. And I visited him there often. I loved going to New York, but I had a limit. I couldn't be there more than 2 weeks at a time.
But that must have been neat for you as a young person to go, I'm going to go visit my dad in New York City. Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah,
I enjoyed New York, especially the younger I was. I really enjoyed going and visiting. Yeah, there's a lot. It never sleeps.
Now, how long did he stay with the New York Times, and then how long was he in New York City?
He stayed with the New York Times until 2000.
Oh, so he was good there.
He had emphysema from smoking all of his life, and so he really had a problem with breathing and
In New York City, yeah.
and so he ended up retiring from the paper. I used to go and visit sometimes at the paper. Dad would take us to the paper once in a while.
At the Kansas City Times.
At the Kansas City Star and Times, but they didn't have, Dad didn't have an office. Dad had a quad of desks where his reporters sat with him, and he sat there, and they all smoked and talked, and it was I don't know how to describe it, Tom. I know you know a little bit about it too, but
I was working nights part of the time your father was there. It was a very unusual environment. You would not see it these days.
yeah.
A lot of yelling.
Yeah.
And when I started, it was pretty much stay away from Haskins and the city desk.
He loved his work, and I'll tell you, he died in 2003, and I was on the board of a professional association at the time, and the couple weeks following my father's death and his obituary, the paper, the Kansas City paper, did a nice write-up for it on him and with some great pictures. And I was on the board of this professional association, had to sit down and meet with them for ongoing business of the board. And of course, several of them had seen the article and had, given me condolences and everything. And I said, my father loved his job more than anything. He did love us kids, but his job was first, always.
Wow.
And I told him, I was like, if you take anything away from that, I want you to remember that you're dada first or your mama first.
Yeah.
And then you're whoever you are with this board or your career. Keep that perspective first and foremost. I love my dad. I'm not trying to say anything derogatory about him, but, always family first, always.
Now, did once he retired, did he stay in New York City or did he come back this way?
Actually, that's an interesting part of the story, too. So my father, when he retired, he was looking for ways to improve his health. And one area of the world that he felt really good in was in Cancun area, Mexico. So he was in this Cancun area of Mexico. I've never been there myself, but he stayed with some friends there. He got some kind of treatments that he felt made him feel better, but he ultimately succumbed to pneumonia
in Cancun.
In Cancun,
Okay.
That's where he passed away. And he was in Cancun at the time of 9/11, because when 9/11 happened, I was like frantic trying to get hold of him. The phone lines were just, out. And then finally heard from him that, oh no, I'm in Mexico.
Yeah. Well, from what I've heard about your dad, and this has been Tom and I talking, he was a very direct person. If he was upset with you, you knew it.
Yes. With journalism, I was on the high school journalism and then in college. And my dad never looked at a paper that he didn't critique hard on.
Yeah.
And I was his daughter.
Yeah. You probably got it worse.
I never got the pat on the back that says, "Oh gosh, you did that just perfect." No, it was like, "Where's the why? Where's the how? Where's the?" those kinds of things. But it made me better, and I will say, I do have a very strong drive that I know comes from my dad.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
Did your father once he left the newspaper, once he retired, did he do any more writing? Did he write
No.
fiction or cover anything down there?
No, I'll tell you, after he retired, one thing he really enjoyed was editing pictures. Isn't that weird? But he loved photography, and he traveled a lot, all right? So he loved, I think he told me one of his most favorite places on the planet, there's two that I know, and I'm not sure which one was his most favorite. He loved Mongolia, and he loved New Zealand.
And New York, and you said he
took
loved New York.
Tons and tons of pictures of those places wherever he went. And so in my home, I have photographs of just random things that he took pictures of, and then he loved doing the editing on those pictures, or to brighten them or soften them or whatever. He loved traveling, and so I think that was mostly what he liked doing afterwards. So I have a picture in my bedroom, and it's a great big 11 by 17 picture of this facade of this beautiful church. And it's a blue church, very ornate, an unusual hue of color. And that's a picture he took in Russia after they opened up and allowed reporters from America to come back in. And the church had not been used for so many years because it wasn't, I don't know, they restricted the religion there. And he took a picture of that, and he told us all sorts of details about it and going in and how ornate it was inside. I didn't see those pictures, but I have that picture just to remember that memory of the storytelling that he told us.
Well, Shelly, I want to thank you for being with us today, being a lifelong born and raised Bates Countyan. I like how you said that.
Thank you for letting me relive some history about my dad.
Well, thank you. It was very interesting.
My sisters are going to, laugh at me and be jealous at the same time, maybe, for not being able to be here too. So it was a good thing to talk about Dad.
Well, it was our honor and privilege to hear. Anyway, thank you again for being here. You have been listening to the Heartland Insiders podcast with Gordon Sixkiller and Tom Stock. Today our guest was Shelly Harrison, and thank you for listening.